GothamChess has played many games with many brilliancies, and he's beaten many great players. But today, I think I found the two best games of his career. These are his two immortal games. They will live on forever because of their pure beauty. And so today we're gonna dive deep into both of them. You're watching the Chess Geek channel. We upload every other day, so make sure you subscribe, and let's jump straight into the first game. Both of these games were played online. In the first game here, GothamChess has the white pieces, and in the opening stage, he develops his pieces and gets ready to castle. But what you'll see is that very quickly, the way that he organizes his development leads and lends very nicely to an attack. You can see that start with the move here, knight to g5. You're already trying to set up some pressure on the king side, and for example, you already have certain threats, perhaps on e6. One potential idea is bishop e6, they take back, and then you take back with a fork. You're going to regain some material and open up your rook. And so to avoid that, black here played the move knight to d5, trying to shut off this attack and stop this idea from being possible. But now, by moving the knight, you've sort of let go of your control over on the king side, and therefore queen h5 comes with an immediate threat of checkmate. And in fact, in this position, black should have played knight to f6, returning. Now, it's understandable why black did not play this. It's a very humiliating move to have to retreat and basically admit that your move and plan was not very good. But sometimes that's a necessity. Sometimes you have to make a retreating move back and admit that your plan wasn't as strong as you thought it was in order to survive. Black decided not to do that, and he went for h6, but now there is a beautiful sacrifice, and again, it occurs on the weakened light squares. One of the key properties here as well, notice this bishop from c8, it moved to b7, and therefore it abandons these light squares, and even though they might seem very strong, they are not as strong as they look, and indeed that becomes very clear after knight takes e6 in this position, blasting through and opening up black's defenses. And the point is, after they take back, we now play rook takes e6. So we sacrificed a piece for two pawns, but by doing so, we have huge compensation. First of all, this knight here in the center is already weak and hanging. This king is completely open, and you'll see that in the next couple of moves, white will punish that open king. So black decided here to go knight to d4 to attack the rook and put some pressure. Now, in this position, many people would simply retreat the rook and bring it to a safe square. But no, Levy found a stunning second sacrifice to complement the first knight sacrifice. Rook takes h6. And again, the idea is the same. We want to completely expose and open up this king side. Now, again, we're threatening a serious idea. We're threatening checkmate in one with rook to h8, and therefore black cannot ignore this. Now, there's a couple of things to notice. What if you take this rook? Well, now, the way that white will continue is, well, notice that there's a lot of pressure on this knight. And so white can, for example, first take the pawn like this, just win the pawn. But ultimately, what white will do is they're going to give this check on h5 and win the knight. So for example, you can take here like this, bishop takes, and then queen to h5 check, the king moves, bishop takes, and in fact this will also end up in checkmate. And so this is the huge threat that white has in this position if you take the rook. And so what black did was actually kind of genius. They decided to sacrifice a piece, knight to e2 check, with the intention of taking a few of the flames out of the position, getting rid of some of the attacking pieces for white. And so now this knight is a bit more nicely defended, and it's not being attacked as heavily. And therefore, in this position, black decided to take the rook, hoping that that was enough, but it wasn't. And you'll see that GothamChess continues very convincingly. He takes the pawn with check, and then plays the very calm knight to g3. Now, as it turns out, it was better in this position to go queen to g6 check and do a very similar idea, and in fact go bishop h6, where checkmate now is very difficult to avoid. But I do also like the simplicity of the move that was played. In this position, you don't have to go for the fancy checkmate or go for the, very risky attack. The move knight to g3 is a simple way to get another piece into the game, right? And this is one of the key ideas where the engine might not agree with you. Again, the engine can see the checkmate, the beautiful idea, but this is such a human way to play the position. You bring another piece and it's going to get to the point where black simply does not have the resources to defend. And indeed, that point is very close to happening. Rook to f6, queen to g5 check, the king moves, and now we bring that knight further into the position, knight to h5. We're hitting the rook. We're also threatening some devastating checkmates. And so, for example, in this position, the move b5 was played, but now there's already a forced checkmating sequence, queen g7. And check this out, bishop b5 check, the bishop locks. We're going to take the rook first, then we're going to take the bishop, and we're going to finish off with a nice queen and bishop checkmate on the king side. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we're moving on to the second Immortal game from Levy Rozman. And in this one, I actually like it even more because the finishing touch, the finishing checkmate is so incredible. Now, you can already see that GothamChess is going for a very aggressive setup. This move f4 is not one that you play lightly, and it's not one that you play with very kind intentions. You're going for f5, you're trying to trap the bishop, and again, explode open the king side. This is one of those moves which is very risky, but can lead to stunning results. And that's exactly what it leads to in this game here. Bishop d3, the threat is now to insist on going f5, and therefore the knight comes to c5, to remove the defender of this f5 square. Castles, knight takes, pawn takes. We have knight to f5 and knight to f3. This is actually a move that I really admire as well. I think a lot of people would take kind of the easy route here and take the knight. But then you realize that, okay, the bishop takes. Now the bishop can reroute back to this diagonal. There's pressure on this pawn. You're giving black a bit more counterattacking chances. You're giving them more life. And therefore, by playing the move knight to f3, you keep this bishop shut. You don't allow this pawn to move or this bishop to get into the game, and you allow your knight to reroute and still get a lot of play. A very mature idea, bringing the knight back with the intention of then reactivating it into a very strong position. So queen to e2, we have h3, and we have the move e6. This is a very typical idea where you give away your piece as black with the intention of following that up by winning back the piece in, various different ways. Notice this is check and the knight, so you're going to win back the piece, and now it is white's king which is open, and therefore, of course, Levy does not take the knight. He ignores it and continues instead by developing more pieces. Knight to c3. We have bishop e7, we have takes, and knight takes d5, the beginning of the beautiful Immortal concept. You essentially continue to open up the position and take advantage of the king which is in the center of the board. So what happens here after they take? Well, now notice that this bishop is hit, and so you want to add more pressure onto it while the king is tied down to that bishop. It can no longer castle because you're going to lose the bishop. Now there's a couple of ways to go about this. You can go bishop to a3 here, but the issue with this move is that black has some stunning defensive resources. They can, in this position, go knight to e3, cutting off the control that white has along this file, and therefore threatening to take the bishop. And for example, if you take the bishop, well, now knight to f5, and it's not so easy, because even though this looks like you're winning the queen, there is one final trap, bishop e6, and check this out, bishop takes b6, knight to g3. This is absolutely devastating, and black gets the queen back and actually manages to consolidate their position a little, develop more pieces, and is soon going to castle. And so for this reason, Levy decided to go for an alternative method to add pressure to the bishop, and he played the move rook e1, and this sets up a very beautiful tactic which is very soon to happen. So black here gives back the piece, realizing they simply cannot stay in control of it, and their idea was to at least win the exchange, but now it's a little too late because all of these pieces are in the attack, and the way in which this game ends beautifully illustrates that point, because every single piece is crucial to this final checkmating sequence. Check this out. We have bishop to d4, we have bishop to e5, and ultimately queen takes f8. You sacrifice the rook, but then give this check. The king is forced to come here. You bring over your rook. The king comes to h7, knight g5, check, knight f7, and rook h8. A stunning finish to the game. Now, one of the funny things is that, in fact, Levy could have played this a couple moves earlier. In this position, you can already go for this queen sack. It already works here. But there's no need to go for that. I mean, you're happy to, first attack the queen a couple times, get yourself ready for this sacrifice, and then play it on the board. A beautiful finish, and indeed an Immortal game. Thank you for watching. Make sure you subscribe for more content just like this, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace out.